You're listening to The Big Fred Tuesday, and for my weekly segment on the history of film, I have decided to talk about a great filmmaker who was born on this day in 1929 in Ostrava, Czech Republic, and would become a major figure of what is one of my favourite film movements, the wild and wonderfully rebellious Czech New Wave, a period of formalist filmmaking that happened in the years preceding the 1968 Prague Spring, a period of political liberalization and mass protest in the Czechoslovak Socialist Republic. I'm talking, of course, about the amazing Věra Chytilová. It's important to understand that at this time, formalism in general was very much frowned upon by Soviet and socialist authorities because it contrasted the socialist realism art of the time, the official art of the time, and because of its criticism of society. In other words, there was a clear model of what art should be like. It should be optimistic, reflect the lives of the proletariat, and it should be supportive of the state, and anything else was formalist, therefore dangerous, and should have been oppressed. But the films of the Czech New Wave certainly had formalist tendencies, and had mostly been made by a group of graduates from FAMU, the Film and TV Academy of Performing Arts in Prague. Among them, Věra Chytilová, the only female student in her class, who had initially studied architecture and philosophy but soon abandoned the course, earning a living as a model and a clapper girl at Prague's famed Barrandov Studios, the largest film studio in the country and one of the largest in Europe. At 28 years old, she entered FAMU to study film, and already from her graduate film, The Ceiling, from 1962, one can notice the feminist themes that would define her later works and make her so problematic in the eyes of the Czech authorities of the time. With her following works, she became always more formalist. Her films were absurdist, surrealist, prone to stylistic excesses, and often also making use of much satire and comedy. In 1966, she directed her most famous work, Daisies, a masterwork of the Czech New Wave. The film focuses on two women, Maria I and Maria II, a brunette and a blonde, who decide to respond to the consumer-oriented society by playing a number of outrageous pranks on its adherents and by destroying its material symbols. The Czech authorities banned it for a year, but if history has shown us anything, it is that censors of any country at any given time in history have never been the most clever of people. And what actually got the film banned was not its proto-feminism, an attack on empty consumerism, but the incredible waste of food that is seen in the final slapstick sequence, an explosion of colour and texture that was also made possible thanks to her wonderful collaboration with her cinematographer husband Jaroslav Kučera. In 1969, she released her final film for 8 years, Birds of Paradise, an amazing surrealist work, and could only return to filmmaking after writing an open letter essentially asking for forgiveness for making the works she had made in the past. This was quite a controversial moment, but what must be considered is that Chytilová was desperate for work and in financial dire straits, and that many of the Czech New Wave filmmakers too had abided to authorities without much fanfare, while many others, including Miloš Forman and Ivan Passer, fled the country altogether. Chytilová's open letter was almost used as an example and a warning to all artists of the time not to upset the authorities. As a result, some have said that her later works were less daring than her Czech New Wave output, but I tend to disagree. Later films like The Very Late Afternoon of a Faun from 1983 showcase her usual stylistic excesses and continue their exploration of power and gender role. In 1989, she even directed Tainted Horseplay, which was one of the first films to talk about AIDS. And that was also the year of the Velvet Revolution and the birth of a new democracy based on human rights, although headed by President Václav Havel, who claimed to have no time for feminism. In her later years, Chytilová was heralded as a legend of Czech filmmaking both at home and abroad. Her last film was the dark psychological comedy Pleasant Moments from 2006, and she died in 2014. Chytilová embraced both surrealism and comedy in her films. Most of her films are vibrant in colour and texture, and her most notable works from the 60s, Daisies and Bird of Paradise, were banned. Her works are celebrated by feminist theorists for their attack on the patriarchy and exploration of gender roles and power. Yet throughout her career, she refused to be identified as a feminist, mostly because she was skeptical and suspicious of slogans and gathering cries of any kind, and longed first and foremost for individual artistic freedom. Yet from the time she started film school as the only female student in her class, she automatically and rightly earned her spot in the book of the history of women in film, thanks of course to her stellar filmography that continues to rightly be celebrated to this day. Věra Chytilová, we speak your name and we salute you, and you're listening to The Big Fred Tuesday. We'll be back for more after this.